When companies talk about success in data, these days they're usually referring to machine learning. And machine learning is a complex operation to get right, so this is no small achievement. But for every 10 companies that I encounter that can tout some wins in machine learning, I only can find one or two who can confidently say their metrics are accurate and clearly defined. This is interesting. You'd expect competencies in one area to relate to competencies in the other. It does not appear to be the case. These are two separate hemispheres. Both of them rely upon data, but they have their own complexities. Now, what is a metric? Really, it's any measurement. I like to think of it as a measurement that is repeatable and also useful. Being useful is not a requirement for a metric. It feels like it should be, though. I can't think of a good counterpoint. When would you have a metric that you want to maintain that's not useful? If you can think of an example, you can let me know. But let's say a metric is something that's repeatable. It's a measurement that's useful and repeatable. So then, what's a key metric? What's a core metric? What's a key performance indicator or a core operating metric? These are terms that we hear. Are these just metrics that are more important? If that's the case, then are the other metrics not important or less important? When I hear companies talk about key metrics, I think what they're getting at is the broad, simple definitions that maybe encapsulate large movements in the business or the product, really large movements in the financial performance. I think this gets to an important aspect of metrics or key metrics, which is that they're really describing the movement of other metrics. For key metrics, they're usually describing the movement of financial metrics. But of course, for key metrics, there are metrics that describe them. So there are layers of metrics. Maybe starting from the endpoint would be financial metrics, working backwards to key metrics, and each key metric can be deconstructed into numerous metrics, and so forth and so on. So what emerges here is we have not a hierarchy of importance with our metrics, but a hierarchy of detail. And this is an important thing to distinguish. We don't want to think of our metrics as just an arbitrary list of definitions. We have a system of metrics. Really, we should think of them holistically. They're all equally important because we need to be able to describe movements from one metric to another. So when one metric changes, we want to know why. That means looking at the metrics that are beneath it. It's like taking apart an engine. We need to have a grammar in place to understand the relationships between metrics. I think companies get into difficult positions with metrics when they actually try to separate out the important ones from the less important ones, because then they wind up treating the important ones with special governance and pay special attention to them, processing them, accuracy and alerting. But for the other ones, they wind up just kind of forgetting about them. And then when you try to connect these two pieces, the connective tissue is not really working. And we can't really properly understand what's happening with one. We dive under the hood and we see that we don't know what's going on with the metrics under there. So we need to have a metric system. And this is Hawkwind's approach. We really focus on really providing the right grammar, the relationships between metrics. Starting from the financial metrics and working backwards, it's very important to have the relationships in place. The knee-jerk reaction for many companies when they have problems with metrics is to go into documentation, to start creating documentation, or to start generating, to build superior pipelines, alerting. These are all very important things to do for the purpose of data integrity. But it's not useful to do it for just a certain set of metrics, and we have to first have in place a taxonomy, layers of metrics that we understand relative to each other. Now, there's really not a single solution. There's not a tool. There's not a technology that you can put in place that's going to fix this. This is fundamentally a question of understanding the drivers and turning those into metrics and working backwards. We actually went ahead and posted a very simple compressed framework. I'll post it in a link here. You can take a look at it. It's very short, like 15 or 20 different points you can look at for a metric that will give you a springboard in terms of understanding where it fits in, how it's defined. And this is a very small snapshot of how we approach metric validation and clarification. Also, I'll add that we are currently, our network of experts is expanding, as I mentioned last time. I'll post the link there as well. If you're a data scientist or analyst, please take the questionnaire so you can be considered for future panels.